Hello, brothers and sisters. The title of the message today is Being Sufficient Under the Grace of God. Number 2, God gave us a man. Number 1, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Our God is the one who gave us something from the beginning. I'd like to emphasize this to you. Like a farmer sows seed, God gave us everything. God created means God gave us everything. We should not try to wring and squeeze water from dry towel. Life becomes difficult, complicated, and dizzy as they try to excavate something where there is nothing available. God did not give them, but God created and gave us everything. People should not try to make things artificially. As God gave us so many things, we should try to make good use of them. We should not try to search and make something that really doesn't exist. That's why life becomes so hard and complicated. If our eyes become opened up, we will realize that there are so many things that God had given us already. There are no more things that God will give us. In spite of the fact, if we ask God to give us, it is a foolish thing. God already gave us the gold, and why should we try to ask God for still an iron? God is our creator. God created all the creatures that had never existed before. People argue and fight among themselves. God gave us abundantly not to fight. Even though the fact as we are blindfolded, we cannot see what God had given us. People only seek for what God had not given them. That's why life becomes difficult. One of the famous Korean Buddhist monks just sitting without lying down for 10 years. Why was his life full of such wandering around? It was because he was just seeking what's not already existing. If he sought what was already existing, he could seek right away. Didn't need to suffer so much. But as he was seeking what's not existing already, he sought all through his life. He could not find it. Sorry for him. Why people would say there's nothing in my life? It is because people just seek for vainful things, not the fruitful things. They are just seeking for the pods. They cannot get the core, even though they seek for all through their life. Their conclusion is just like pods and husks. There is a Korean saying, tigers are seeking for something inside the barley straw stack. As the tiger sick with the paws and it makes a lot of noise, tiger thinks that there are something inside. So tiger keeps on rummaging the barley stack, but there's actually nothing in the stack. Dried barley straw just make a lot of noise, that's all. Human life is just like that. If we seek for the right thing in the right place, we can seek easy, but life becomes empty as they are not seeking the right thing in the right place. Our God prepared everything for us. He loves to give us everything and gives us abundantly. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and all the creatures that move along the ground. God gave us everything. God said, let there be light. And finally, he himself came to us as the light itself. And he said, let us make man. And he came to the earth as a man. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John chapter 1, verse 14. God became flesh. He himself became a man and came to us. First, he said, let us create man. Finally, he himself became a man. When he said, let us create man, God and man were separated. But as the revelation became clearer and clearer, he himself became a man and came to us. In Genesis chapter 1, let us create man actually means that he wants to become a man, he himself. What a tremendous thing it is. In order to make a man, God divided water from the water, upper water and lower water, and made an expanse and let the land to be exposed. This means that God made a certain space and a certain domain. God made the land and air, two kinds of areas, and let people live on earth. God gave a certain domain and let people live there. People would ask, where is my standing point? But God gave the standing point for us already. That God gave standing point for plants, standing point for birds, a standing point for fish, standing point for animals, and standing point for people. God prepared a certain area for each species. God appointed a certain area for people already, but people look for another position, leading God appointed a position. That's why people have no position. That's a tragedy. Subsection chief has his position as a subsection chief in the company. There are his chairs and desks. But if subsection chief seek for position at the section chief's position or at the bureau chief's position, he doesn't have his position. There's no chair or desk for him there. For people, God prepared a certain area, but people leaving that area and looking for other things. That's why they have no standing point. If people stay at their own area, certain duty and assignment will be given. But if they leave that position, they have no duty and assignment. These days in some companies, they get rid of desks and chairs. If company tries to lay off some people, they cannot say, you are laid off because of the labor union. You can come to company, but no desk, no chair, no job. They just smoke at the lobby all day and come home. After several days, they voluntarily quit their job. If people find out their position, they can naturally find out their duty and assignment. People would think, what kind of work can I find out? But if we find out our position, we can find out our work so easily. Therefore, God made an expanse. If everything is covered up with water, all the creatures cannot survive. God divided land from the water and made a space that birds can live. If the land is covered with water, all the creatures cannot survive. That's why God separated land from the water. He made domain where all the creatures can live. But then, where is our domain? Finding out our domain is the way we can become truthful people. Jesus replied, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus came to the earth, but he couldn't find his domain. In spite of the fact, he had his own domain. He couldn't find out his domain in the world, but he had his eternal domain in another place. That's why he could carry out his eternal work. If he had found out his domain on the earth, he could have carried out his work, but he had his eternal domain in another place. Those people who have eternal domain can carry out eternal work. Those people who are working at the Educational Bureau they carry out things related with educational issues. Those people who are working at the Defense Bureau, they can carry out the defense issues. The domain of Jesus was an eternal place. That's why he was carrying out the eternal work. If we know where is our true domain, we'll be able to find out our true work. The domain of man was already decided. People's work was already decided. Outwardly, there are so many things people must do, but actually, it is simple. As the culture and civilization was so much developed, there are so many kinds of work people must be engaged in. But those things are not the true work of people. They are just seeking for people's daily need. So many people are engaged in computer-related work. If people think that's a human duty and assignment, people are mistaken. Why are people working with computers? It is just to feed themselves. Even animals also work to feed themselves. That's why the true and unique work of people, all creatures work to survive. Working to feed themselves is not the unique work of people. The people have people's unique position. That position is expressing God himself. Therefore, other kind of work is not man's work except expressing God himself. Any other work is not man's true work. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest." Jesus had to have food, he had to sleep, he had to walk, but his life was not weary and burdened because he had just one unique work. We also have just one unique work. We don't need to feel weary and burdened there. Among all creatures, man's position is already decided. Plants must stay on the land, fish must stay in the water, birds fly in the air, animals must run around the land. If the plants fly around the air or birds are in the water, they will surely die. All the creatures must stay in God-decided unique domain. That's very true. Man's domain is representing God and expressing God himself. Only in that domain, people have endless things to do. But if we leave that place, people will be engaged in just useless things. God gave us not only domain, but also seed. Therefore, he let the land reveal and plants grow up. Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they'll be yours for food." He gave us seed. He gave us seed, and through seed, we can express God and represent God. God gave us his words, and they are seeds. If those seeds grow up in ourselves, we can express God and represent God. If the prince grow up, he will become a king in the future. If farmers sow the beans, so many beans will be able to be harvested. After seeds sprout and grow up, it will take some time to bear fruit. God made two great lights, the great light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. He set them in the expanse in the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. God gave us seeds and time for the seed to grow up. He gave us the night and the day. We can take rest at night and grow up during the daytime. God gave us life, and he also gave us time to grow up. Therefore, we should not think hurriedly. Some people would say, "Why can't I grow up?" We don't need to say that. God gave us a seed and enough time to grow up. We don't know until when the sun, moon, and stars will be disappeared, will be still in the sky rather. But as long as we are living on the earth, they'll not be disappeared. God gave us enough time to grow up. In spite of the fact, people would say, we have no time, time is too short, and they become so impatient. We should not think that time is too short. We don't need to become impatient. God gave us enough time for the life to grow up. There is no one who have no time to grow up. We are not lacking time. The Word of God come into ourselves and grow up and become mature. God gave us enough time. If we're interested in peripheral things, we are lacking time. But if we concentrate on the seed growing up, time is not lacking. What a great blessing it is. Suppose God saw the seed today and tell us to bear fruit tomorrow right away. It'll become curse. But God gave us enough time to grow up. Therefore, life is sufficient. God created everything with abundance. Nothing is lacking. If life grows up, they become flourishing. All life grow up. As they grow up, they become flourishing. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. God created big fish and all the moving creatures and flourishing creatures in the water according to their species, and birds with wings according to their species. Birds and fish express flourishing life. Let's look at the birds flying in the air. Let's look at the school of fish swimming in the water. What a great expression of flourishing life. In order for an airplane to take off, how much energy is necessary? Airplanes produce so much noise, the fumes, in order to take off. They consume so much oil and reach to a certain altitude. But for birds, they don't seem to use too much energy to take off. How much energy do they store in their body to fly such a long distance from the North Pole to South Pole? They surely have flourishing life in themselves. God created birds and let them fly in the air. When life grows up, they become flourishing. They don't produce too much noise. They fly so quietly, but their life is flourishing still. When fish swim in the water, they express the flourishing life. When you swim in the water, we have to use so much energy, and it's not easy. When submarines move under the water, they use so much energy. In the modern time, people made a nuclear-powered submarine in order to spend much time under the water. They can stay under the water for a long time, but can they stay underwater like fish? No, it's impossible. When God created seeds, He let seeds sprout and grow up in the flourishing way. People cannot copy it. Even though the seed may be small, we cannot despise them. In Isaiah chapter 53, verse 2, it said, He grew up before Him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to Him, nothing in His appearance that we should desire Him. People did not consider Him precious. But if people realize the power of life of seed, there is no more precious thing in the world. People cannot copy the power of the flourishing life. Look at the grass grow up and cover up the whole land. When they are small, they are so weak. If people step hard on them, they will die and bugs will eat them. But once it becomes stronger, no other life can overcome their power of life. They cover up the land and gradually cover up the whole land. God let such kind of life to conquer, rule over, and subdue the land. Therefore, they will surely conquer, rule over, and subdue all the creatures. Even though it may be small now, but when they become flourishing, they will see the day when they will conquer, rule over, and subdue the whole land.
Our life that we have right now looks small and shabby, but as the life grows up day and night, someday it'll be expanded and grow up to be so big. If you loan money from the bank, the interest of the loan grow up so fast. When people run business, they fall asleep at night. But the interest of the loan of the bank never fall asleep. They will grow up bigger and bigger even at night. That's why a bank hardly ever bankrupt. How can they become bankrupt if interest of the loan grow up without stopping day and night? Life also grows up day and night. That's why they eventually become flourishing. God's work is perfect. There's nothing imperfect. In such a way, God created man. In such a way, God makes people to become God's image and express God. People want to see God. They wish to see God even one time. So they pray hard. Some people would say, I have seen God's palm. I have seen God's feet, the edge of God's garment. I smelled God. But I'm sure they just experience illusion, hallucination of some kind. Before Christianity was introduced, people would say in Korea, we have seen a grandpa with a white beard wearing a white garment. And after Christianity was introduced to Korea, people would say, we have seen a man who is wearing curly hair because people saw holy icons too much. I used to wish to meet God myself. I just wanted to see God's traces. Everything about my faith was so vague and dim, so I just wanted to receive some of God's traces. I wish God would hit my back while I'm praying, or let fire pass by my back. The people usually think that when they feel the heat pass by along their spinal cord or tongue become twisted, God really gave me a sign. People become so happy thinking God came to me through my tongue. If they receive the spiritual gift of speaking of tongues, those people who believe in God always want to experience God. Even through a narrow channel, I myself wanted to experience God by receiving spiritual gifts. But God did not give me any gifts. It seemed that God gave some special grace to some people, and they would say, I have seen God. I have been to kingdom of heaven. But God did not give me any kind of experience myself. But later, I got the enlightenment. But it is quite normal that I cannot see God. God is not the being in whom we can meet him through such kind of experiences. No. God is not the being in whom we can see him with those concepts. No. He doesn't have appearance of an old man who is wearing a white beard and white garment, or a man with a curly hair. He's not the being whom we can experience through fire or making tongue twisted. At that time, I thought I was abnormal myself at the time, but as I look back, they were abnormal, not me. Actually, they saw illusion or hallucination, I'm sure. They poured too much thought there. That's why they saw illusion or hallucination. They jumped with joy and they become extremely joyous. They shouted out loud. But God does not come to us in such a way. He does not come to us when we close our eyes, shout out loud, or beat our chest. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, over all the creatures that move along the ground. We did not know what is the meaning, the God's image. But now, as we can see Jesus, we can see God's image. Even though we cannot see him with our physical eyes, we understand that image. Even though we could not meet Jesus, who walked the land of Nazareth, in spite of the fact we have his image in ourselves. Let us create man according to our image and likeness. That very image is in ourselves today. After Jesus passed by, his outside is gone. But his image is still remaining. People try to get hold of the man, Jesus of Galilee, but he was disappeared. But his image is still remaining in us even today. Jesus was lifted up to heaven after the resurrection. Disciples were looking up to heaven. They're watching so carefully. Two angels with white robes said, "Men of Galilee," they said, "why do you stand here looking into the sky?" They said, "Why do you? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him going into heaven." The one who went to heaven is just outside appearance. Actually, outside appearance is not necessary. God created man according to his image and likeness. Actually, he left that image behind. This was his eternal image and likeness, not the physical. The one who went up to heaven riding the clouds, some people in Galilee could see him, but not all mankind. His outward appearance, some people could see him temporarily, but not eternally. After Jesus went up to heaven, his image and likeness was left behind. It was his eternal image and eternal likeness. All mankind can see him eternally. He wanted to show us eternal image and likeness. That's why he came to the earth and left. He created man. Actually, God created man means that he came to the earth with man's appearance. God became a man himself. In this man, there is God's image and likeness. Therefore, where is God? In the mountain or in the fire? His image and likeness in a man. In Jesus, there is God's image and likeness. From Adam to Christ, all through these years, God wanted to show his appearance through so many people. But people don't want to see the image and likeness of God, but they want to see other things. They want to see fire. Other people want to see the water, or some people want to see the wind. Still others want to see the commandments or laws, tradition or rituals. Eventually, only outside husk was remaining. People are holding just the husks or pods. The true content is gone. He left, and people are holding just his garment. Jewish people are just holding husks and pods, not the true image and likeness, the true content. They're just holding memories about Jehovah, cleaving the Red Sea, eating manna. God let the fire come down, a sacrificial offering, and the Bible. The beans are gone, and bean pod is remaining. Same picture. One of our neighborhood, one man sowed beans. He was supposed to harvest beans at the right time, but he came too late. The beans were all gone. Maybe he can feed his cows with the bean pods, but what good is there to harvest bean pods without beans? People are just seeking the pods, not the beans. For Jewish religion, beans are all gone. They're just holding empty pods for 4,000 years. Long years. They just loved the pods for such a long years. When actual beans came, they threw away, saying, "This is not what we are looking for." If we feed cows with bean pods for a long time, cows don't eat beans. Beans are much more nutritious, but they reject beans, saying beans have fishy smell. Like the same manner, they rejected Jesus. They spewed out Jesus. Alas, God wanted to bring up our only begotten Son, Christ is His Son, in the pod, but Jewish religious people just took the pod, not the content, not the true beings. Christianity today is the same. Christian people just look for the pod, forsaking Jesus, who Word became flesh, crucified Christ, who finished up everything that related with Adam. Jesus, who got resurrected and ascended to heaven in order to become our eternal life. They have no other things except just holding the pods. This is their spiritual death. Sorry. They're just holding the dead pods. Pods are necessary in making the beans to grow up, but after the harvest, they are not necessary. They are holding just pods. Why? Bible was given to us by God so that we can understand about Christ. But Bible is just like a pod of beans. God wanted to give us beans. That's why He just needed pod temporarily. But people just can't see the pod without beans. Thus, they became consolidators of the Bible. They repeat the same phrase over and over again. Why don't you keep the Bible? Bible told us to follow in such a way. It is not right according to the Bible. The inner content is already gone, and they just argue right and wrong. Just talking about pods. What's the use of arguing? Jesus had left already. Letter is not important. The mind of the writer is important. Letter is just a means of communication with Christ. When He sent the package, we must pack well in order to protect the content. But after receiving the package, we throw away the box and wrapping paper. Even we preserve the empty box without the content. What's the use? Who will preserve the box on the shelf, try to show off, this is the package from Mr. So-and-so. Bible is just a box. The content of the gift is Jesus. But people fight among themselves because of that box. So many people received the hatred, condemnation, and were killed because of the Bible. What a contradiction. That is a trick of Satan. After God passed by, what would be remaining? After Jesus passed by, what would be remaining? After the Bible passed by, what would be remaining? For that one man who God said, let us create man according to our image and likeness, to show us that very man. From Adam to Christ, and many incidents were necessary. All other things were not necessary. Box is not necessary until the package is delivered to the receiver. After delivery, box and wrapping paper, they finished their duty. The God said, oh, these things in order to show the man to the world who was created according to His image and likeness. Yes. There's nothing more important than man. Man is more important than anything else in the whole world. Thank you. Hallelujah. May God bless every one of you. Thank you. Thank you.